A 49ers podcast on the Blue Wire Podcast Network. I am Kyle Madson. I write about the 49ers over at NinersWire.com, part of the USA Today Sports Media Group. He is Chris Biderman, and we're going to talk about the 49ers schedule. But before we do that, a big shout out to our homies at Lamb Chops. We are presented by Lamb Chops. They are the official clothing brand of Candlestick Chronicles. Hit sglambchops.com right now. Check it out. Hoodies, t-shirts, shorts, sweatpants, the mechanics jacket that comes with their spring line is sick as hell. Use promo code Candlestick20 while you're there and get 20% off your order today.
I'm wearing lamb chops right now, as always.
Sorry, I thought we had a whole thing there. I thought
No,
I
you're
said
good.
my thing then.
You caught me in a moment. I'm looking over here at the banners. I was thinking in my head, man, maybe we should upgrade these banners. Maybe it's time. That's an off-season project for maybe later on in the summer. But I am wearing my Lamb Chop sweat shorts as always. They feel like the uniform for recording this podcast, of course. Shout outs to our friends up in Minneapolis. The series against the Nuggets is tilted a little bit.
I don't know why you got to bring up old shit.
Okay. Still like our Wolves' chances. They got a home game against Denver to force a game 7. But of course, our homies at Lamb Chops are partnered with the Minnesota Timberwolves, have made some really cool gear. So shout out to Craig and them. But yeah, we love our Lamb Chops.
At SG Lamb Chops on Instagram. Visit sglambchops.com today. Use promo code Candlestick20 for 20% off your order. High quality, comfortable, and most importantly, you're going to look dope. Join the herd today. We are also sponsored by Prize Picks. Speaking of Prize Picks, Chris, I have an entry going right now. I need Kyrie to be a little bit more generous with the basketball. He only has 4 assists. I need 8 from him. And if you're wondering what Prize Picks is, it is my favorite type of daily fantasy. You don't have to worry about playing against thousands of other people or sharp guys or bots or anything like that. It is just you and your entry. You pick 2 to 6 players. You pick more or less on their stat projections, and then you watch the winnings pile up. Or if you're me tonight, like I said, you watch the L's pile up. I need Kyrie Irving to get more than 7 assists. It doesn't look like he's going to do that. I also took Cameron Brink, Stanford legend, to have more than 7 rebounds in her WNBA debut, and last I checked, she had 0. So that's a tough go for me. But we still got time. We still got time in that game between the Los Angeles Sparks and the Atlanta Dream. But man, it's enhanced my sports watching experience a lot, and I can't recommend it enough.
Absolutely agree. It's super fun to just be able to have a clean slate every single game or every single day. Pick new players, pick new stats. You're not tied into, a draft and then you lose a guy to Tommy John surgery or an ACL tear or something early in the season. You get a clean slate every day. You don't have to argue with your friends about whether you want to do a snake draft or an auction draft. So shout out to Prize Picks, a very fun way to do daily fantasy sports.
PrizePicks.com/candlestick, promo code Candlestick for a first deposit match up to $100. That is PrizePicks.com/candlestick. For a first deposit match up to $100. Prize Picks, daily fantasy sports made easy. All right, let's talk about the 49ers schedule. The 49ers got screwed. They got hosed. The NFL doesn't want to see them win. This is pointless. I'm boycotting the season. This is the final episode of Candlestick Chronicles until somebody holds the NFL's feet to the fire for what they are doing to the San Francisco 49ers. There, I said it.
In what ways?
The bye weeks. The rest disadvantage, let me tell you. The 49ers are the only team playing 4 teams coming off bye weeks, Chris. 4 teams are coming off bye weeks when they play the 49ers, including Kansas City in week 7, Dallas in week 8, Seattle in week 11, and Buffalo in week 13. That's like 3 of the 49ers' 5 toughest games all year, and the opponent will have a massive rest advantage. Brutal.
Yeah, I mean, the Niners had the worst rest disparity, I think, in the NFL last year. And looking at this chart from Brian Burke on Twitter, 2024 is just a little bit worse even. And we talked about it going into last year. I didn't think it was a big deal. Like, I kind of think if you're just a good football team, you should just win. the games that you're supposed to win, regardless of whatever the rest situation is. But we did see it show up, right? Like the Niners lost in Cleveland, and I think the Browns having a bye going into that game certainly played a factor. I think the Cincinnati Bengals having their bye before coming to play the 49ers, I think it was the next week or about 2 weeks later. I think that certainly played a factor in that game. But overall, Niners still got the number 1 seed. Niners still went to the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
I don't think it's the reason why the Niners lost the Super Bowl, but every team gets one bye, and sometimes some teams get screwed. I do think it's a little weird that this has happened now 2 years in a row. I think
that's the thing that jumps out to me.
I think last year you just kind of chalk it up to maybe like schedule randomness. And I'm sure there was an element of the 49ers like front office or Kyle Shanahan or John Lynch or all the above talking to the league office being like, guys, you guys kind of screwed us on this rest thing. But then the NFL came back and it's actually a little bit worse this year, which is surprising.
They said, bang.
So yeah. So I it didn't, and maybe last year was sort of an anomaly in terms of it not impacting the 49ers all that much in terms of, they were still the number 1 seed. They went 12-5. Maybe that catches up with them more this year, but it is surprising to see that happen a second year in a row. The third worst net rest differential since 2002. And when we say net rest, it means if a team has a bye week before playing you and you're on a normal week, that's like -7 or whatever, right? I think that's how that works. So net for the entire season, the Niners are the third worst, or tied for the third worst net rest difference since 2002, which is, it's not nothing. I don't think it's everything when it comes to the schedule, but it's not nothing.
So I'm looking at this. The 2012 Eagles went 4-12, and the 2012? No, what?
You mean not?
Go back to that screen. The 2005 Chargers
Eagles?
went 9-7 and missed the playoffs. The 2017 Giants went 3-13. So it's not, and those might have just been bad teams. I'm not going to deep dive their rosters. I believe 2012 was Andy Reid's last year in Philly. That wasn't a great team. The 2017 Giants were definitely not that good of a team. The 2015 Seahawks did make the playoffs. They went 10-6, but they lost in the divisional round. That was the year after they lost the Super Bowl. So I'm with you, man. It's tough. And I think it's exacerbated by the fact that on this chart that we have up on YouTube, of the worst net differential since 2002, the 2023 49ers are also on that chart. I think that's part of why that sticks out. Let's see, the 2023 49ers are number 7 on that list. So I think that's part of the reason it's an issue. And then the other thing that just sticks out is it's Dallas, Buffalo, and Kansas City. Kansas City and Buffalo, 2 of the best teams in the AFC, and Dallas figures to be one of the best teams in the NFC. So it's tough, but at the same time, if the 49ers don't win the Super Bowl, we're not going to be like, well, it was the rest disadvantage. You got to go win your games.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess let's go through it real quick. Maybe we go through it in quartiles. Start 4 games.
I think you could just say quarters. You don't have to be an asshole and say quartiles.
Fair enough. Obviously start. So we should say, zooming out too, they have 6 primetime games, a number of which were included in our last podcast when we talked about the best games that we like that probably were most suited for primetime.
I think we nailed it.
Home Monday night to the New York Jets. I know you like that game a lot. That's a really cool way to start the season. At Minnesota, fine. At Rams, fine. Home versus New England. It feels like the 49ers should go at least 3-1 through the first 4 games of the season there.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. Can we pause on the Jets game for a moment?
Yeah.
Is it insane to you that the NFL has decided that Aaron Rodgers is going to debut his new Achilles in week 1 on Monday Night Football?
The NFL.
Again? I don't know, man. It just feels like, huh?
It'll get numbers. It's New York. It's the Niners.
Like, okay, I don't need the obvious. I don't need the obvious explained to me. Let's go to the world where I'm doing my bit. Dog, do it week 2. You're going to get numbers on Monday Night Football regardless. Put the Jets on a 1:05 or a 1 o'clock p.m. East Coast start against the Dolphins or something in week 1. Make sure Aaron Rodgers can, play football without blowing out a ligament. And when that happens, go, okay, now, yep. And then you go into week 2, Monday Night Football, Niners, Jets. But at least if something bad happens, it's not happening for a second consecutive year in week 1 on Monday Night Football. I can't believe they're trying it again. And maybe they picked the Niners strategically because it's natural grass. And they're like, yeah, this is a good spot for him to come back. And like you said, all the national TV numbers is going to go crazy. But man, I just can't believe they're risking it.
I would push back because the risk is part of the appeal. Like for a national audience to be like, that we don't know if Aaron Rodgers can play. Like this is why we're tuning in. This is way more interesting. If Aaron Rodgers throws for 250 yards and completes 60% of his passes with 2 TDs and a pick in week 1 against Miami.
Sure.
That week 2 game is much less interesting from that standpoint. So I think the fact that Rodgers is coming off the injury and it is the first game of the season, I think that totally adds to the intrigue. I get what you're saying, but that's kind of what preseason and training camp's for.
Yeah, I guess, man. Crazy. Anyways,
at Minnesota, that game's not going to be in London.
Yep.
At the Rams, afternoon game, New England at home.
Nothing super interesting there. I think there's a little bit of intrigue with the Minnesota game to see if the apparently greatest quarterback who's ever put on pads, JJ McCarthy, is starting by week 2, and then same thing with Drake May for New England in week 4. Is he starting by then, or is it Jacoby Brissett? Week 2, I guess, is interesting because you'll either get your Sam Darnold revenge game or you'll get, all-time great J.J. McCarthy playing. But, yeah, and then a divisional game with the Rams. Yeah, good. I'm with you. 3-1 minimum through the first 4 games. I think they need to go, for sure.
Yeah. Okay, next 4. Arizona at home, afternoon game. At Seattle, quick turnaround Thursday night, prime time. I think Niners going to Seattle should just always be in prime time.
Unless one of them is ass. But for the most part, if they're going to be at least competitive, I'm with you.
And then they have the long week before hosting Kansas City. And Kansas City will be coming off their bye. So it's the Niners get their mini bye. KC has their full bye. I'm actually, for reasons we talked about in the pod we recorded earlier this week, I'm not surprised that this is not a primetime game because it feels like we haven't seen the Niners and Jets. It feels entirely new. Detroit later on feels like a game that absolutely should be a primetime game. Like everyone has seen the Niners and Chiefs play, 2 pretty highly watched games in the last few years. So I think it's fine that that's on Fox. Dallas, NBC, the Sunday night. It makes sense. It's not the most interesting game. Maybe Dallas will be better than I think they're going to be. But we've seen that movie before. And then the bye week. So Arizona,
you just did
Niners
5
have
weeks.
a nice. Yeah, I know the bye week. It's just leading into the bye week.
Sure.
But you have Arizona, Seattle, and Dallas. So with the Rams week 3, Arizona week 5, and Seattle week 6, you have your 3 division opponents. Those first 3 games done. The first round of your divisional games done before the bye week, which I think makes sense.
Yeah, Kansas City coming off their bye, Dallas coming off of theirs. That's a tough 3-game stretch, man. That quick turnaround to Seattle, then home Kansas City, home Dallas. That's we'll get to another 3-game stretch later that is going to be a tough one, but that's the first, to me, major test of the year, that 3-week run. The Niners have 2 Thursday night games. I think getting a Thursday night game against a division opponent is a pretty significant advantage as Thursday night games go, because that team. The preparation is still really, really tough, but I think, easier when it's a team that you face twice a year. And granted, the Seahawks are going to be a little bit different because it'll be Mike McDonald as the head coach and not Pete Carroll. So they're going to be a little bit different team this year. But for the most part, you kind of know what you're going to get with the Seahawks, and it's a short travel. Remember a couple years ago, they had to go to Tennessee for a Thursday night game? Like, God, That's a team that not in your conference. You barely ever see them, and you have to travel to Nashville on a short week. Like, that's just brutal. So I'm with you. Those night games in Seattle are so sick. It's just they feel heavy. So I dig that.
Yeah.
Can we talk about
the bye week 9?
I don't want to blow past the bye week. Just real quick. Okay. I want to talk about the bye week because that might be a good time for the 49ers to heal. And speaking of healing, this segment is sponsored by Unified. Unified.com/candlestick to learn more. I think that week 9 is the ideal time for a bye week because you have a good sample of games to, I think something the 49ers do really well. And I think part of the reason that they're so good, A, after their bye weeks, and B, in the second half of years, is because they are particularly effective at self-scouting. And when you have 8 games to go off of, including ones against like the Rams and the Jets, who have a very good defense, and then Seattle, who I think is going to have a pretty good defense this year, and Kansas City and Dallas, you get a really, really good idea of, okay, where are we at as a team and what do we need to do moving forward to get better and make a run. I think the 49ers identify that as well as anybody. So when it comes to bye weeks, I think week 9 is just a perfect spot to get an extra week off.
Yeah, I think you always want to have it right in the middle of the season. And I think the fact that it's coming after potentially 2 really tough games, KC and Dallas coming off their byes, it's going to be a really good opportunity to take inventory, rest up, and get ready for the stretch. Yeah. I was looking back just now at 2019 because I remember the Niners had their bye super early that year. They had it in week 4.
Oh, 4. That's
so
right.
The Niners
they played the Steelers in week 3.
Yeah, they played
Cleveland
3 games
in week 3.
No, it was the Steelers. They played Cleveland coming off the bye in week 4.
Off the bye week, that's right.
But like you have extra time off between your last preseason game and your regular season opener, and then you get, so they played 3 games and had their bye, and then went on a run with 12 straight weeks, 13 straight weeks, before getting the number 1 seed and ultimately getting to the Super Bowl. But I remember a big thing that year was they needed the number 1 seed super badly because they had their bye so early on.
Yep.
That's what made that Seahawks game in the finale such a big deal, because it'd been forever since they had a bye week and they just needed a breather before going into the playoffs. So to have it week 9, like right in the sweet spot of the middle part of the season, I think, if you're going to complain about the rest disadvantage, which I think is probably the most valid thing about this schedule, if you were to as a fan complain about anything, I think that's fine, but you make up for it a little bit with the bye week there and the fact that you don't have an international game.
Yeah, no doubt. A lot of good little things. We'll talk about this when we're done kind of recapping the schedule here, but a lot of, I think, advantages for the 49ers in this schedule. The rest disadvantage stinks. Playing 4 teams coming off byes is tough, but I think for the most part, getting that bye week in the middle of the year, we saw how much it helped them last year. Like, can you imagine if they had a late bye or early bye last year where they just looked like they were running on fumes? It was really clear they needed a week to A, rest, and B, figure out what the hell was going on with their defense. I think it's a really good spot.
If they go to an 18-game schedule, which it seems like they're going to probably within the next 5 years, they have to have 2 byes, right?
Oh my God.
Like, it feels like they have to.
Yeah. Can you imagine if you have 18 games and you have your bye in week 4? You're basically playing what more than what used to be a full season consecutively.
Right.
That'd be brutal.
Like college teams play 9, 10, 11 games?
Something like 13 that. Sometimes, I think as many as 14.
Yeah. So And there are a lot of college teams have 2 buys.
Yeah. Unified. That's the segment about the bye week, the 49ers' chance to heal in the middle of the season. Heal their offense, their defense, their bodies. That's brought to you by Unified, a new super innovative global network of wellness centers powered by Energy Enhancement Systems, or EE Systems. To learn more, visit unified.com/candlestick. That's unified, UNIFYD.com/candlestick. All right, what about after the bye?
After the bye at Tampa, sneaky tough game, but I think last year after their bye week they had to go to Jacksonville. So another bye week, another trip to Florida. Seattle at home, and then probably, I mean, Kansas City, Dallas is a really, really good 2-game stretch. At Green Bay, at Buffalo, with Thanksgiving sandwiched in between. I think one thing that, I mean, a lot of things stand out about this 2-game stretch here, but November 24th at Green Bay, December 1st at Buffalo. It's going to be really cold in both places. And it's going to be, I mean, it's going to be dark in Buffalo for sure. An 8:20 local kickoff. So it's just going to be, when you saw it, like when you look at the opponents and you see that Green Bay and Buffalo are on the schedule, for me, I was like, I hope these are late in the season, because I want it to be cold. I want it to be like, I want there to be elements thrown in. I don't want it to be like, oh, it's a balmy 50 degrees. It's, September 15th in at Lambeau Field. Like, no, if you're going to Lambeau, go when it's cold, and it's going to be cold. It's not going to be January cold, but it's going to be around freezing. It's around freezing in October in Green Bay. So I'm just fired up that it's going to, the elements are going to be part of the game, I think, or part of in both of those games. And I think that's going to kind of prepare you for the playoffs. Like, I think, maybe that's a cliche. Maybe I'm making too much of it, but I really like the fact that both of these games are sort of later in the season. Because it also, like, later in the seasons, you have playoff races that are super important. It feels like the intensity of games kind of picks up later in the season than September, October. And I think I just really like that both these games are later in the schedule.
Was that 4? Tampa Bay? Was that? I thought there was one more.
We did Tampa Bay, Seattle, Green Bay.
Oh,
Buffalo.
Seattle. That's right. That's right. Okay, so I'm with you. I like the quote unquote football weather games. And I don't know if it'll be snowing or anything crazy like that, but I just looked it up. The average temperature in Green Bay, the average high in Green Bay on November 24th is 40 degrees. I'm guessing it's not much warmer in Buffalo a week later. 2 things on this. One, I've seen multiple people bring up that Thanksgiving is sandwiched in between those 2 games. Why does that matter?
I'm just talking about for us, for fans. Niners don't play on any. Niners do not play on any holidays this year. After playing on Thanksgiving, Christmas, and New Year's last year.
Just big
shout
time.
out to the schedule makers.
Yeah,
that was definitely the best thing about their schedule, in my opinion, was the fact that I do not have to worry about podcasting or planning my holidays around the 49ers schedule. I love football, don't get me wrong, but man, it kind of sucks when you're trying to create content.
I love football. Do you know what I love more? My family. And do you know what I love more than that? Drinking with my family. So no holiday games for the Niners this year. This stretch here, Seattle at Green Bay at Buffalo, is the other really, really rough 3-game stretch on the schedule for me. Seattle, I think, is always going to be tough. And then at Green Bay, at Buffalo. Green Bay should be pretty good this year. I'm not super high on them, like they're going to go win the NFC North necessarily, but I think they're going to be a really, really good team. I think we saw it last year in the postseason with the way they throttled Dallas, and then quietly here, probably should have beaten the 49ers. They're a good team. Buffalo's obviously really good. Both those games on the road will be fun. I want to point something out. The game in Tampa, the 10 a.m. start, that's one of 2 10 a.m. starts for the Niners this year. One of them is in week 10, and then the other one is after their bye week. And those 10 a.m. starts for West Coast teams can be really, really tough. But having one that early in the year and your first Sunday game of the year, and then having the next one come after your bye week. That's like I said, these little advantages. That is one of them for me.
Yeah, you meant week 2 and then after the bye week. You said
Oh, what did
after
I
the bye
say?
in week 10.
Yeah,
You meant
week 2. Yeah. Week 2 and week 10.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's one of the things that definitely benefits them for sure.
Yeah.
I also think they've been pretty good. I haven't done the dive, but I think they've been pretty good at 10 a.m. start games. So they finish off
that up while you're reading
Chicago. Caleb Williams, December 8th, coming to Levi's Stadium.
Can't wait.
Maybe the Bears are good at that point, or maybe they're a complete dumpster fire. Who knows? Rams at home on Thursday. So the Niners do have 2 Thursday games, which isn't great, but it does mean you get a little bit more time off before going to Miami. I think that's really cool. That's a late season game. That's a banger for sure. Monday Night Football. I think it's the last Monday night game of the year, December 30th, Detroit.
That's
rematch
correct.
of the NFC Championship game. An absolute banger. I think that's exactly like I think the NFL did a really good job with. I just feel like I mean, looking at the Niners,
that might decide the 1 seed.
Yeah, it might decide the 1 seed, and it's just a really good matchup. And like, it's great. I'm glad it's the 16th game of the season, not the 17th game. I think if I'm the Niners, you would love to sort of have the apex come in week 16 rather than week 17. Not that you want to take Arizona lightly to end the season, but like it feels a hell of a lot better having a divisional opponent that you're really familiar with the last game of the season than it would say Detroit, Green Bay, KC, Dallas. Like that's week 17 is a great spot to get Arizona coming off the short week against Detroit. But I love that Detroit game, man. That game's going to be super fun. The stakes are going to be high. It's going to be on Monday night. I'm super into that.
Yeah, man, the Rams game should be good. Caleb Williams being at Levi's Stadium will be fun. You get prime time against the Rams in a game that might matter for the division. Then you go to Miami. It's Mike McDaniel. It's that fast-ass Dolphins team. And then you come home for Monday night against Detroit in an NFC title game rematch. Like, come on, man. That's an excellent stretch to end the year. Arizona's a wild card for me. I have no idea whether they're going to be good or not. But that stretch of 4 games is great. Like, really, really fun. And again, it's another East Coast trip to Miami where you're getting the mini bye, like you said. So another, just there's the rest disadvantage for sure, but there's also these little tiny advantages built in, and that's one of them as well. I have the 49ers 10 a.m. starts here, by the way.
Okay, how are they?
They have started 26 games at 10 a.m. under Kyle Shanahan, and they are 15-11.
Yeah, so pretty good.
Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of the 11 losses came in 2017, 2018, or 2020.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
They were not good those years.
No, not particularly.
Couple things still worth pointing out. The Niners' strength of schedule based on, I guess we'll start with this, do it this way. Based on over-unders of their opponents, which I think is pretty clearly a better barometer of strength of schedule. I was kind of surprised given how many good teams are on the Niners' schedule. It's 18th, according to Warren Sharp of Sharp Football Analysis. He compiles every team's opponents over-unders and ranks strength of schedule that way. So the Niners are 18th there, and in strength of schedule in terms of last year's records, they're 13th. So make of that what you will. Teams change obviously a lot. A lot of teams are completely different during the season than what we think is going to happen with them in the offseason. But I do think it's worth pointing out that just the overall strength of schedule based on upcoming over-unders and last year's record would indicate the schedule's kind of the middle of the pack, which I was a little bit surprised to see.
Yeah, I think the idea, I think the idea of the like first place schedule gets super overblown. Doesn't that account for like 3 games?
Yeah, it's
I, I,
3 games.
it
So
ju-
you get you. So how the schedule works is you rotate a division you play within your
right.
conference and in the opposing conference every year. And then since they added the 17th game, that is another team that finishes in your same spot in their division. And that division rotates, right? So the Niners won their division. So that extra game is the division winner of the AFC West, and it happens to be the Kansas City Chiefs.
Right.
So yeah, it affects 3 games, but that's not an insignificant amount. Like I think it's I again like I'm never gonna be one unless like you have a bunch of crazy trips and you're flying internationally and you have like a huge rest disparity and you're playing on holidays and
Mm-hmm.
stuff. Like I think the NFL for the most part does a pretty decent job of evening out the schedule. Like I'm never
Mm-hmm.
gonna be one to be like, oh, you scheduled 4 hard games in a row. Like there's so much parity in the league and teams bounce up and down between good and bad that it's impossible to know in
Mm-hmm.
May if you're actually going to get 4 really good opponents in a row or not. So like I'm out on complaining about, oh, that's like too many good teams in a row. It's like it's the NFL, man. If you want to win in the NFL, you're going to
Bro,
have to beat these teams.
and if you're the
Doesn't matter when you play
49ers,
them.
if you're the 49ers, you're one of the good teams.
Right.
You're on everybody's schedule. A team that everybody's like, "Oh, really tough game." Oh, you got Niners coming in. That's going to be, oh, you got to go to San Francisco. That's going to be a tough game. And so it's not,
Right.
I don't know. I didn't see anything egregious outside of the bye
No.
week thing. But even that, like, you got to go win your games.
Yeah. Okay. What are your Let's see. Like, give me your 2 favorite games on the schedule.
Ooh, my 2 favorite games. Um, can I pull our schedule up real quick?
Yes, I would encourage it.
Okay, give me 1 second. Where is it? There it is. Okay. My 2 favorite games on this year's schedule. I'm going to go with at Buffalo and the season opener against the Jets.
Okay.
Just big AFC East guy. I'm fascinated to see what Aaron Rodgers looks like. Like this is a 41 or 42-year-old man who tore his Achilles and now he's going to go try and play NFL football again. Super interesting. And if he's any good, the Jets are going to be super dangerous. Plus, you get Robert Saleh against Kyle Shanahan's offense for the first time, so that'll be fun. The Jets had an awesome defense last year. I think it's going to be a really good unit this year. That's a fun matchup to me. And then Buffalo, like they beat the 49ers pretty soundly. The score was close, but the game wasn't that close. Last time they played them in 2020 down in Arizona during the pandemic year. Buffalo figures to be one of the best teams in the AFC, and that'll be a good little measuring stick game for the 49ers in prime time in Buffalo. Like you said, it's going to be dark. That feels like a football game to me. I can't wait.
I agree
What
with
about you?
everything you said. Yeah, I love the Jets game. I love the Bills game. I think my favorite game on the schedule is Monday night, December 30th against the Lions. To me,
Yeah.
like that has the feel, that has the potential to be what Seahawks Niners was in the season finale of 2019.
Yeah.
It's not super often that you get like I know every game in the NFL obviously feels big, partly because of scarcity, right? You only get 17 of these games as opposed to 82 in the NBA or 162 in baseball. Like that's really the reason why the NFL is so popular. But even still, you don't get a ton of regular season games where it feels like a whole lot is on the line,
Yeah.
right? And like
Mm-hmm.
that Seattle game in 2019 felt like a ton was on the line because of how important that bye week was, like we mentioned
Mm-hmm.
earlier. But this game in particular, if the Lions have the season that we think they will, and the Niners have the season that we're expecting them to have as a contender in the NFC, that game could ultimately be the determining factor for the 1 seed.
Yeah.
And that's why, and Monday night, late in the year, It's so good. I'm
Mhm.
just super pumped about it. Aesthetically, the red and gold versus the blue and silver, whether it's
Mhm.
Niners Cowboys or Niners Lions, it just pops off the screen for whatever
Yep.
reason. I would say it's one of those, like, it just adds to it for reasons I can't really explain. But if you're
Yeah.
into aesthetics and uniform contrast, which can be important, Niners Lions is always really good from that perspective. Um, Man, would it be lame if I said my other favorite game was the week before at Dolphins?
No, I think that's going to
I
be
really like that game.
a lot of fun. Yeah.
I really like that game. I like the fact I just love Kyle Shanahan and Mike McDaniel
Mhm.
going against each other. I love the speed that the Dolphins offense has and the test that poses the 49ers defense.
Mhm.
Raheem Mostert, those running backs, like all that speed they have. I think Miami's defense, if it can stay healthy, is
Mhm.
talented and can, be good enough for the Dolphins to make a run. We'll see about Tua. You know, I think I don't think Tua is, I think Tua very correctly is placed in the Kirk Cousins camp of, like, can put up monster numbers potentially in the regular season, but might not be a guy that you really count on to win big games. This will be a big game. Like, that will be one of the biggest games in Tua's season, because the Dolphins are going to be in the thick of a playoff hunt late in their season. The Niners are going to be one of the best defenses they face. And so I like seeing, I just like high stakes football. And it just feels like these two games at Miami, home against the Lions on Monday night, are going to be like super high stakes. And yeah, like, it's easy to say the Chiefs game. You could say the Dallas game if that game still feels significant given the way, recent history has gone.
Sure.
But I think in terms of, like, combining, like, the interest of the matchups and the stakes of the games, I think the Dolphins game and the Lions game are my favorite. But I
Yeah, those are
do
good.
love the Jets and the Buffalo game, like you mentioned.
Uh, One other one that intrigues me, just as we talk about individual games here, that week 3 game against the Rams is fascinating to me for the reason that the Jets, it's Aaron Rodgers, coming back from his Achilles. Okay, the Vikings, it's either going to be a rookie JJ McCarthy in his second start en route to his Hall of Fame career, or Sam Darnold, who kind of I think is who he is at this point. Week 3 is going to be a really, really interesting test for Nick Sorensen, the 49ers' new defensive coordinator. And I know Brandon Staley's in the building, and Brandon Staley and Kyle Shanahan know Sean McVay as well as anybody, and they're going to have a good grasp on what the Rams offense is going to want to do. But the Niners, for the most part, have done a pretty good job of stuffing McVay offenses in lockers for the last few years. And that'll be the first time that Sorensen's getting a chance to go up against them and to deal with, the different wrinkles that McVay is going to have and the different adjustments they're going to make. That's going to be a huge test for me, just kind of to see how does he adjust week to week, and then how does he adjust in games, because McVay is going to. And how does Sorensen respond to that? That'll be fun.
Yeah, and
Basically, that's
just
the
how
week
are the
Nick
Niners?
Sorensen either keeps his job or gets fired, is what I'm saying. I'm joking.
Yeah, week 3 would be early, but it'll give us a good idea, right? Like, going against Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp, I think is going to be obviously a super important test. And if Renardo Green is playing as a rookie early on and he has to go up against Cooper Kupp
Good
and
point.
or Puka Nacua, we'll have a pretty good idea of where he stands, at least during his rookie season.
Yeah.
I think the Rams are pretty clearly the second best team. I know they made the playoffs last year, but I think they're the second best team in the NFC West. I think they're better than
Yeah.
Seattle.
I think so too.
And losing Aaron Donald obviously hurts. I think Jared Verse has the potential to be a Pro Bowler, like, from the jump. So that'll be interesting to see. But yeah, I think any game against the Niners and Rams is going to be interesting. So there is that. Okay.
Matthew Stafford was really good last year, by the way. Like, I know his arm was going to fall off in 2022, but last year, do you know what he did numbers wise last year?
I'm sure you're going to tell me.
He finished 8th in MVP voting. He was almost 4,000 yards in 15 starts. He was almost 4,000 yards, 24 touchdowns, 11 picks. But he was excellent down the stretch for them. Like, he single-handedly kept them in the playoff race and was really good in the playoffs. So, shout out to Matthew Stafford. Good player.
I've thought for sure Matt Stafford was going to retire like last offseason or maybe the offseason before it. It's like dude banked like $250+ million and has like serious neck issues and has played through a ton of injuries throughout his career. He just won a Super Bowl. Like, credit to him, man. If you want to keep playing, go for it. If that were me and I had banked that much money, I would not be getting hit every Sunday. But
over the last 6 games, here we go. These were the numbers I was looking for. Over his last 6 games, he completed 67% of his passes, 1,700 yards, 15 touchdowns, and 3 picks. That's a 109.5 rating. And then in the playoffs, 25 of 36 for 367 and 2 tutties, no picks against Detroit in Detroit. Really, really good.
Game.
Really good player.
Rice in the chat. Could the Cardinals legitimately get the number 1 pick next season? They look horrendous on paper. Maybe.
I disagree, dude.
Really surprise. It wouldn't surprise me at all if the Cardinals won like 6 or 7 games and were
their defense, dude.
Like a top 10 pick, but not in the wild card hunt. I mean, crazier things have happened, but they're not a team that I think is just going to like lose 15 games. I think they're better than that, particularly if Kyler stays healthy.
Yeah, man, that's it. Like Kyler can hoop. Kyler can flat out play. And even though they were dealing with quarterback stuff last year and Kyler was hurt, and they still played hard as hell. And I think Jonathan Gannon's a pretty good coach. I think that defense is going to be ready to play. Marvin Harrison Jr., I'm with everybody else who's super high on him. I think Michael Wilson can play a little bit. Trey McBride is good. James O'Connor is good. Like I think they have a chance to actually be a really, really tough out.
Yeah, and they could run into some wins that we wouldn't expect. Like that wouldn't be surprising at all. I think there's always
the Eagles last year in Philly.
We do a really good job, not us, but just
Full
like
stop.
the football punditry. The football punditry as a whole seems to lock in on off-season takes, and then we sort of like they feel like they get reinforced like throughout the months and months of the off-season. And we're like, oh, this team's gonna stink. And then we go into the year, it's like, wait, the Cardinals are 7-3?
Right.
What? Like that stuff happens all the time in the NFL. So I think there's so much parity in the league. The line between being good and being bad is so thin, which is what makes the league so interesting.
Yeah.
And so I wouldn't pick the Cardinals to be in the mix in the playoffs come December, but like weirder things have happened. I think I agree with what you said. Like they're talented, and if they stay healthy, I think they could be problematic. But I still don't think they're better than the Rams. And probably
no, I think the Rams are pretty good.
Seahawks, although maybe it wouldn't surprise me if they had a better season than the Seahawks though either.
No, me neither. That's what's I don't want to dive all the way into this, but just to the parity point, it's really hard to go find teams right now that you're like, okay, that's a 3-win type of team. Maybe Carolina, depending on how you feel about Bryce Young. But outside of that, I think you can make a legitimate case for a lot of teams, if not being bad, mediocre. Yeah.
Okay. What's the toughest stretch of the schedule in your mind?
Man.
And let's keep it to like 3 games because we could say
it's
there's
one of those
there that's like 6.
Yeah, it's one of those 2-3 game stretches I talked about. I think I'm gonna do that week 11, 12, and 13 because not only are the 49ers flying back from Tampa Bay for that week 11 game against Seattle. Seattle is coming off their bye week that week. So you're getting a well-rested Seattle team. And then you have to go to Green Bay. And then you come home. Probably, I don't think they're going to stay out east or in the Midwest. But then you come home
It doesn't sound like they're going to stay out east.
and then you have to go back to across the country to Buffalo, who is coming off their bye week and playing them on Sunday Night Football. That's a brutal stretch of games against a division opponent coming off a bye week, and then two teams that could win their divisions. So, yeah, that's the 3-game stretch for me. All due respect to Kansas City and Dallas, and a short week game in Seattle, which is another one I talked about earlier. That 11, 12, 13 run is, oof, that's tough.
Yeah, I mean, really, the stretch from like October 10th to December 1st is tough. Just like that's like the meat of the schedule for sure.
Yeah.
But just for the sake of the conversation, and this kind of sticks with to what I said were two of my favorite games. Short week against the Rams, a long trip to play the Dolphins, and then a game against Detroit at home. It might not be the toughest stretch overall, but I think that's going to be kind of an underrated tough stretch of the season. Because I think we can look at, say KC, Dallas, and then, Tampa Bay, Seattle, Green Bay, Buffalo. Like that's obviously a tough stretch, and that's the meat of the schedule. But I think that 3-game stretch, a short week against the Rams, against, like the Rams games are always going to be tough. And I think this year in particular, the Rams games might be tougher than they've been really since the Rams won the Super Bowl. And then at Miami, and maybe Miami falls off. I don't know, but I have a lot of respect for the roster that they have and the coaching that they have. And then Detroit, for reasons that we've talked about, that 3-game stretch is going to be really tough and really important. In part, like it's going to be tough because it's coming after all that stuff, and it's harder to like be healthy, later in the season after attrition and all of that, and the 2 trips that you mentioned. And it also kind of feels like that Chicago game against Caleb Williams has like trap game written all over it. Like you have 2 huge games at Green Bay, at Buffalo potentially, and then you're like, okay, we got a short week against the Rams, and then at Miami, Detroit, and Chicago's there. It's like, no, you can't overlook this team.
Yeah.
So
it depends on how good I think Chicago is.
Sure. But I'm just saying, like, there's, that game feels like if you're going to circle a trap game on the schedule, I think that would be one of the options for sure.
But absolutely. No, man, I couldn't agree more.
I think the schedule overall is strong. I really like a lot of the matchups. I think the Niners it just feels like a lot of bangers. It doesn't, they don't have the Falcons. They don't have Carolina. And some of that is like the NFC North is good. They have a first place schedule. So it just feels like a very, very good schedule. And we see the AFC East as much as most of the rest of the conference, but it just feels kind of fun when you get like the Jets and the Patriots and the Bills and the Dolphins. I like that stuff. Yeah, man. It's like you said, the NFC North has 3 teams that could, and depending on how you feel about the Vikings quarterback situation, 4. But that division is up for grabs because all of those teams could be pretty good. And then the AFC, you can make a case you can make a case that the NFC North is the most competitive division in football. Yeah, I think going into the year, that's definitely the case. And like you said, every year there's a team here and there that one team has a bad injury that derails their season. Another team just can't put it together and they can't get stops, and they're worse than if Miami went into that game, and maybe it's the Niners this year. We saw it last time they lost the Super Bowl. They had a tough year, but would it shock you if they went into that game against Miami and Miami has like 6 wins? I wouldn't be shocked by that at all. Where they just can't quite teams fall off all the time. Yeah. So and teams that we don't think are good are unexpectedly. Maybe Mike McDonald goes into Seattle and turns them around and turns them into a 13-win juggernaut. I don't know, but weird stuff happens every year like that in the NFL. But I'm with you, man. There's you said pick your 2 favorite games, and it's like, man, you can make a case. I think you find something interesting in every single one of these games. And we kind of just like dismiss the historical rivalry between the Niners and Cowboys, and like don't really think about the Chiefs Niners in that sense, because we've just seen the Chiefs go 4-0 against the Niners. Yeah. Including in 2 Super Bowls recently.
Yeah, Niners Chiefs is there. Niners Cowboys is there. I think the Seattle rivalry has been rekindled. The Rams thing is there always. It's just a lot of good games, a lot of fun storylines. But
Bangers only, man.
That's bangers only on a Sunday. That's it for our 49ers regular season preview. Now let's get to the meat of the pod. Let's talk preseason. The 49ers open their preseason slate in Tennessee. No date or time listed just yet. No, I'm joking. We're not going to go through the preseason schedule. Titans.
Can I just
at Titans home safe?
Can I say
at Raiders? Yes.
It's beyond stupid that there are 32 NFL teams that inhabit every corner of the country. It's beyond stupid that any team would leave their time zone for a preseason game.
Insane. Unless you're going to play on the East Coast because you play on the East Coast in week 1 and you're just going to freaking stay there, then sure. But you're not going to stay for 2 weeks. So,
right. That doesn't happen.
Yeah. How the 49ers don't play the Chargers and the Raiders every year in the and then like the Broncos every year in the preseason is baffling.
I mean, that's typically what they do. But I mean, look, do we still need 3 preseason games? Like 3 is better than 4. 3 is still worse than 2, and 2 is probably too many. So let's just cut. Let's get rid of the Let's just get rid of the preseason altogether. Let's just do it.
Yeah.
No harm, no foul.
I'm totally
18 game schedule. 18 game schedule, no preseason will be great. And you know what you do? You do scrimmages, and then you put that on you put it on Netflix. We haven't talked about like the television aspect of this with Netflix having Christmas games.
So weird.
I guarantee you, if you didn't have preseason games and then you just put joint practice scrimmages on Netflix, the numbers on those things would be absolutely insane.
You could even mic up players for practices and then just show like Hard Knock style practice footage and get numbers. Okay, go behind the scenes at 49ers practice. Here's half an hour of some cool practice footage. I'm in there. Yeah. I am in there way more than I'm in on Niners Titans sometime in the middle of August.
And if you there are not a lot of people who make this argument, but it is out there. If you're one of those people who thinks preseason's important or it matters or like it's crucial to the whole process, tell me why college football doesn't have preseason. College football is fine. I mean, I know they have non-conference games and like maybe that I don't know, but it's still like that still matters. Like you have to win those games. Yeah. So I'm out. Just couldn't be more out on preseason in general. But anyway.
Yeah. Yep. I'm right there with you, man.
That's a topic. That's a topic for August.
Is it?
Evergreen.
We're both out on preseason. And that's the end of today's pod. No, but that really is. That's the 49ers schedule. We will continue, we're not going to look at the schedule every single day, but it can now color the way we talk about the 49ers season as we gear up for OTAs. Oh, my cat is making an appearance. Great. No, please don't step on my computer. There we go. Cats, bro. Yeah, we'll continue talking about this. We'll get you ready for OTAs. And then, of course, training camp when the real stuff starts. So subscribe to Candlestick Chronicles wherever you get your podcasts. Make sure to hit us up on YouTube. Yep, there he is. Make sure to hit us up on YouTube. You might be able to see my cat jump into the frame. YouTube.com/@Candlestick Chronicles podcast, or just search Candlestick Chronicles at YouTube. Subscribe to the channel, please. We would appreciate that immensely. And
like buttons, notification bells, all those things.
Yeah, all that. In the immortal words of Logan Murdoch or the Ringer, all the shits is what he says.
Shout out to Logan.
Thanks everybody. Thanks everybody for listening. Thanks everybody for watching. We'll talk to you next time. Bye.